Back in early days of me playing video games on the computer, there was a package deal. It had games like Dark Forces 2, X-Wing, TIE Fighter. It had 5 different games in it. And I think the first one of those Star Wars games that I played was Dark Forces. But out of all of those, my favorite one was TIE Fighter. I loved that game. That game was a lot of fun.
The X-Wing / TIE Fighter flight sims are considered some of the best out there, even over the Wing Commander and Freelancer we were talking about earlier.
Mm-hmm.
And for good reason.
I remember when Rogue Squadron came out for the Nintendo 64, I was like, alright, more X-Wing TIE Fighter. It wasn't quite that. It did have the Hoth level in it, and I loved roping up AT-ATs. So
Shadows of the Empire was actually the first Star Wars game that I know of that recreated the Hoth battle scene, and it's been recreated so many times since. But
yeah, and pretty much everyone.
Rogue Squadron basically started a whole line of its own, because there was Battle for Naboo, or there was Rogue Leader for the GameCube, Starfighter, and Jedi Starfighter. Now, the only ones out of the X-Wing TIE Fighter series that I had was the very last one, that was X-Wing Alliance. And it had this kind of multiplayer mode that you could set up the AI to play as long as you had the room in the slots, that you could put any ship out there. So I would have these great big engagements of these big battleships on one side and like the Master Star Destroyer or the Death Star or something on the other, and just fill it up with fighters and just go nuts until nothing was left.
I really loved the X-Wing versus TIE Fighter series. There's something to be said for the Super Nintendo line, which was Super Star Wars.
Very hard games.
Yes.
Gorgeous in their own way, but very hard games. I don't know too many people that's actually beat those.
Without cheating.
Yes, without cheating.
Well, then I will take that as a challenge. I actually owned the first one. I didn't put much playtime into it. It was another one of those ones that I found on eBay. I guess maybe 2 or 3 years ago, probably even longer than that, I'm just not remembering correctly. There were a lot of games, new in box, for like $7 and $8 that you could get for the Super Nintendo. It was like somebody had cleaned out their warehouse and found all of these. Super Star Wars, Battle Cars, Killer Instinct even, with the soundtrack included, and I bought all 3 of those. And I did put some playtime into Super Star Wars, and I don't remember being very good at it, but I still have it. It is still in excellent condition, so I'm sure it would start up no problem.
So there was also the RTS games, largely Star Wars Battlegrounds that used the Age of Empires engine, and I actually had those. They didn't draw me in like any kind of StarCraft or Command & Conquer would, but I still put quite a few hours into them. Now, I did not get the Rise of the Empire, which was the big, grand, super epic RTS to end all RTSs where you actually controlled all the ground units and controlled all the space units. And a lot of times I think you actually had to bounce between the 2 battles to make it even more chaotic for you.
I have Battlefront. See, when I bought my PSP, I bought the Star Wars one. Not worth anything anymore because I dropped it, so it was a big gash in the side. But it was the one that had the Darth Vader silhouette on the back, and I bought that just so I could play a Mega Man game and put that straight out there. The only reason I bought a PSP was for Mega Man.
The only reason I bought a Dreamcast was for Marvel vs. Capcom 2, and I ended up finding a lot of nice little gems on that system because I wouldn't do it. So that's not a bad thing.
No, but it came with, I think it was Battlefront 2? I have it somewhere. But anyways, oh, here it is. Star Wars Battlefront Renegade Squadron. I have that one.
I think that was one that's specifically made for the PSP.
Yes. I didn't care for it that much, to be honest. I just don't like the PSP controls when I have to use the joystick on it. I don't like it that much. So
I've heard first-person shooters on the PSP aren't particularly good. That's probably why there's not very many of them. But still, Battlefront basically took the ideas that games like Battlefield had, where it would take 2 opposing sides, and you'd have these tickets. And these tickets are basically how many times you could respawn. And as each side started taking over these sections, which kind of drew the attention to very specific points in the map, that the other side would start losing more tickets. The more flags you had, the faster they'd lose their tickets. When all tickets were gone, of course, nobody could respawn anymore and game's over. And there was also vehicles, there was even some space battles, so it was a very impressive and probably one of the more recently successful Star Wars games, because Star Wars is one of those franchises that has some ups and a lot of downs.
Well, they milk it to death.
They do.
And when you do that to anything, you're going to have a ton of bad games in there with the good ones. What do you guys think about the pod racing game?
The first one I kind of enjoyed for the Nintendo 64. I didn't play any of the other versions of it.
Same, I played the first one to death.
Yeah, I played that one at a friend's house, and it was pretty decent fun. It was one of those games that I kind of meant to repurchase, and I just never did.
It's probably not aged very well.
Probably not. It's probably best that I never found it again.
I have the sequel, Revenge, for the PS2 that I got for a really fantastic price, because I'm not a particularly racing game fan, despite how many racing games I actually have in my collection over there. But I played through it. I pretty much beat everything there was to beat on it. It was kind of a short game, but the one that really strikes me is the Super Bombad Racing. The Mario Kart Star Wars pod racer with all the bobblehead characters.
I don't think I played that one.
I stayed far, far away from that one, and from the critics' reactions to it, it was probably a good thing.
I don't know that I ever played that one. I don't think I did.
I think you'd remember it if you did.
I would probably remember.
Just enough time to talk about the MMOs. Now, I haven't played them myself. In fact, majority of what I know about the original MMO, Star Wars Galaxies, was how much fun people were making of the dancing Wookiees. There's tons and tons of videos about the dancing Wookiees. It was extremely ambitious because you had several different worlds, you had spaceships. It's not something that we haven't seen since then, but especially in an MMO setting, it was the first one to take a lot of different engines and try to plow it into one game, and it kind of worked. It even had some of that Battlefront mentality where they would have these full-scale battles between two sides, but they didn't work very well either.
If I remember correctly about that game, or maybe it was another online game, they changed the battle system just out of nowhere, and it was horrendous. The change was unbelievable bad. It killed the game. They literally killed it. They lost more than half of the subscription. The guy that ran the game had the nerve to put a thing on the site basically telling the people that didn't like it that they were wrong.
Seeing a lot of that lately.
Yeah. Part of the problem is the community, but part of the problem is also when they have one big successful game, they automatically assume they're just best video game creator out there ever. And, the community feeds them that line too, so it inflates their ego, and then when they do something, they make a step that the community doesn't like, then they turn on them. They're like, you guys don't know what you're talking about.
The community can definitely be piranhas.
Oh, yes.
And it's not always necessarily the greater amount. It can be just a small party, but that small party can get very vocal and very angry and very teeth-gnashy.
Yeah.
It's generally the most unsatisfied group of people in a given community that are going to be the most vocal.
And I think that's largely what happened to Old Republic. Now, I think part of what happened to Old Republic was once again a victim of its own hype. I don't know. The game does not look that bad. I don't know.
What I understand, I've talked to people that play this because we had some people leave WoW to go play it, and it lasted for, maybe a month or two, and then they came back. And they said that the game had awesome, amazing storyline to level in. But when you get to the end of the game, there is nothing to do. Yeah, I don't know if that's true today, but it was back then, according to these people. I never played the game, so I can't speak for myself, but according to the number of people that left my guild and then came back, they actually enjoyed the leveling process. They made multiple characters, but every time they got to the end of the game, there was just nothing to do.
And I think that may be what's going to happen to a lot of games that try to put the focus of story over the actual game itself. Yeah. Secret World is probably going to run into this too. I don't know how well it's doing lately. I know I don't see it quite as often as I used to, which is a shame. I really wanted that game to succeed, but I don't know why. I have no particular fan affinity for the creators or the game itself, and I can't play it because of my online situation, so I don't know. I wanted to see something different succeed. Something that broke some molds.
Would be nice.
So more molds will continue to get broken instead of people playing it safe and trying to be another WoW clone.
Well, the economy doesn't help it right now. People are afraid to take risks because they literally, one bad game in this economy will shut down a company.
It will.
So,
and even games that are actual fair successes, and it still crashes some of them. I wish I had some mention there. Titan Quest, yes.
Honestly, right now, I think that if you're going to do an original IP, the safest place to do it would be over some digital distribution network like Steam.
But more or less, I think that's our show for today. Like we've mentioned several times now, we actually know what we're doing next week ahead of time. It's kind of mind-blowing. Scary games.
By scary games, it does not count Resident Evil.
It actually does, at least the first couple. Those were considered survival horror. And there was jump scares, and there was mood stuff. If you want to include 4 through 6, that's up to you. We play a lot of games, and I know there's a lot of scary games we've played, but I don't know if we have enough experience with them to actually make an entire show of.
I'll try to get some Amnesia played between
there you go.
This time and next week.
I actually have that too, so maybe I can get some footage.
Make one of those multiple scare reaction videos.
Speaking of which, you guys will all find out and discover what game made me jump more than any other. I think you will be extremely surprised.
Alright.
So I'm Chris.
I'm Mike.
I'm Gerber.
And we'll see you all next week on PrinnyCast.
Bye.
Next time on PrinnyCast.